Hey, what's up guys, DKP here and welcome to my channel. I finally did it. I'm a DLC champion, Disney Lorcana champion of Melbourne. Here you can see the trophy. It's like solid plastic and the front is like metal, so still looks really nice. Pretty solid. And yeah, I finally did it after 7 DLCs. I finally got the win. This is my 5th DLC top. Yeah, 5th DLC top. And second Mickey. Finally broke the top 8 curse because I was in top 8 like 2 times. 2 times top 8, 1 time top 16, 1 time top 32, and now first place, finally. I'm really happy about it. The journey was worth it, of course, because I won. But it was really hard fought, but we went through all the rounds. First place Swiss into first place overall. Sounds really nice, feels really nice. And yeah, the top seed bonus was also really nice to play. Yeah, I did it all with the Ruby Sapphire deck. You probably already saw it. I call it Ding a Little Lore. It's a little homage on my deck card in earlier sets, Dig a Little Deeper, where people called it Ding a Little Deeper, so I just call my deck Ding a Little Lore. Sounds funny, I guess. And yeah, today I want to talk a bit about it, show you guys why I chose certain cards and why I built like this and how I came up with that. And also, if you guys want to learn more about the deck and learn how to play with the deck, because that is the important part, because everybody can just take the list, feel free to hit up my meta file. I will upload the masterclass there. And then you can just watch through it, and then you will know every single line and every single mulligan and every single game plan that you need to know. And yeah, so this is the list. Of course, if people see it the first time, they will be like, oh no, well, what is this list? Because no top end, no Tamatoa, Maleficent, Sisu, Dime, and so on, right? And the special thing is it runs only 8 uninkables. This is like, I would say something special in terms of Ruby Sapphire, because Ruby Sapphire was always a deck that plays like 20, 22 uninks. Then when people came out, it went down a bit, like 18-ish. And then with Sale, everybody went down to 14, but it was still high for my taste. And I played a deck with 14 uninkables too at the European Continentals, and it was quite much. Like, I still had hands where I was really unsatisfied with the unink count because I was forced to ink cards at the NA Continentals. My deck was basically -1 Thala, -1 Hiram, so 2/2, and +2 Big Sisu, the 8 cost. So it was at 10 unink, I think, yeah, 10 uninks, and I still had hands where I kinda bricked on it because I wasn't able to keep my inkables. You saw it one time on stream. I couldn't keep my I think Groove. Then I was forced to ink it, and then I had to go into the How Far Go route, which I didn't want to. I just needed one more inkable to keep the Groove Maui Half Shark curve. And yeah, that's why I only want to run 8 uninks, or like in general low unink counts, because I don't want to be forced to ink my curve and give up my flexibility, because sometimes I want to have multiple curves in my hand and decide depending on what my opponent do for a specific route, but I want to stay flexible as long as possible. So that's why we run like this kind of low unink. So overall, this deck here is really, really, really strong and fast. It has a bit different game plan than the normal red-blue, because normal red-blue tries to control the board, tries to go for the value route all the time, like all the time. And here we just wanna either go into mana really quick, which is super rare. It's normally only happening in the mirror match, and else you wanna do like gain board control, which normal Ruby Sapphire doesn't do that much, like that early. With like Groove Maui, or like Groove Maui Shark. And then you when you gain the board control, you would just start spamming your actions back to back. Like you go from one develop to the next one, go into vision, vision takes how far, or develop, then you can sing it or you play it out. You just gain a little bit of lore every single time with Shark Maui. And sometimes you have a second shark out, and then what happens a lot is that you will just gain 10 lore at once. Or sometimes like 14 or so. Or sometimes you just go straight up to 20 because you get one of your Pyros life back to back. So that's like the beautiful thing about the list. It's super, super fast. It has like different lines. It still has the normal Ruby Sapphire lines to an extent, right? You can still go the same curve until B prep. Afterwards, unfortunately, we don't have Tamatoas and so on. And Caesar's Maleficent, but up till then, the curve is still the same. But you can just also decide to go a really, really fast route. So yeah, for this deck, the most important part is the 2-cost RAM. So we have Tipo and Sail. We hard mulligan for it. If you watch the stream, I was on stream 4 times. I full mulligan every single time when I didn't have the Sail. There are multiple reasons. First, we need it, right? We need to go directly in our focus. As you can see, my deck is full of focus, but also the deck only plays 8 Onyx. That means you are not likely to go into the hands where you have like 3-4 Onyx like the normal Ruby Sapphire, where you might end up, yeah, just straight up bricking. Like you're always risking to brick, or not even bricking, but you will be drawing 3 or 4 Onyx where you are forced to ink every single good inkable, and you don't even have a choice. Like you have to ink your Tamatoas and your Sharks. Like every single time I see it in the mirror match when they start inking their good cards, I know that they have way too many Onyx in hand. Especially Sisus and big Sisus, all of these kind of cards. And that's why I build it like this. Like that's where my motivation come from, also my frustration kind of bit. And yeah, that's why I went into this. So you can mulligan, full mulligan always. You can think about keeping like Popsicle. I personally wouldn't, because this deck is not relying on Popsicle at all. I don't rely on Hiram, that's why I'm playing only 3, right? And you always wanna get the RAM. So that's why it's at 8. Like you can't even think about playing 1 jump ahead, but the problem is like it's an uninkable. Like if 1 jump ahead wouldn't be I think I would even play that probably, but yeah, in this case here, 8 inkables, 8 rain cards, that's why it's in here. Now, for the 4-cost, this is an interesting thing. Basically, these are all 3-cost, right? Because we ram into them. So, the 4-cost is not bad. Also, it's especially really good because we can sing how far go, right? But why these numbers? These numbers are because this deck wants to win on the draw. I want to maximize my odds on the draw and not on the play, because on the play, this deck is insanely strong. We have multiple lines on the play. I don't need to rely on turn 3 Hiram. Like I don't like Hiram on turn 3. This is a play that you only do when your opponent opens super slow, or when your opponent plays green steel, then it's fine. But if you play against like anything faster, or you need to trade, you know that you need to trade, then it's much better to play Tala. Or when you deal with like 1-drops or 2-drops, like, and then you use Super Goof. So if you go Tala, let's say, or like if you're on the play, you can always go Tala, you can go how far go, and then go into Shark, for example. Or if you know it's a mirror match, you can you have specific curves where you go mana on turn 3, for example. That's up to you. Like there are multiple lines that I explained in my masterclass, but in general, the numbers are in this way because I'm concentrating on the draw, and for on the play, I have enough plays where I don't require a 4 of Talo or 4 of Hiram. So, but in general, I don't wanna play Hiram on turn 3. That's why he's at 3. It's a rather late game card. Normally, when I play Hiram, it's after the Shark. That's my natural curve where I play the Shark out and then I go into Hiram. At that point, I have 6 ink, right? Then I can get one of these, play these out, gain 1 lore, gain a card, and then I can ink or not, depending on my hand. And yeah, that's why I only play 3 Hiram, 4 Goof, because not only is he a really strong turn 3 plays on the draw, you can all normally take out 1 drops, quite often also 2 drops, and then if he survives, you can sing How Far Go. That is like insane power move. And in the late game, you saw it probably on the stream, you can finish your opponent quite often. Like the last 4 to 6 lore, you have like 2 or 3 goose in the hand and just play it out and challenge the characters of your opponent. So that's why he's really important in this deck. He's an early game tool and a late game tool. That's why I like him a lot, because many of the anti-aggro stuff, let's say small Sisu, Queen of Hearts and so on, they have the niches, they have their they have better use cases than Goof many times, but the problem is just late game, they're not doing anything. Like they can still remove stuff or they're inkable or whatnot, but this card really helps me to finish the 220 lore. So that's why it's 4 off. Then Rush Maui. Rush Maui is like an insane tool to gain the board control together with Goof, because both cards are always trading 2 for 1, meaning your opponent will always need to use 2 cards, or like you lose 2 cards until the card is gone, because they will survive 1 trade always, right? Let's say you are challenging as me, or you're challenging here Calhoun or Fox, Daisy, like there are so many targets for Rush Maui. So we have insane mid-range tool of these two. Most people play this one at 2 or 3. I see people running my list already and cutting down to 3, but the problem is you need to see it at 5 ink. If you don't ram directly into half shark, you need the Maui on 5. There's like no debate. There are only some niche situations where you can play like Hiram or Tala in between, but normally your opponents, you need to catch up, right? This deck is still slower than most decks, and you wanna catch up with them and just run the Maui into the stuff so you can just trade favorably. The best case would be you are trading something and then it survives. You play out Shark and Maui can sing How Far Go or Let It Go. Like this is really good curve. What I really like about him, and many times in many matchups you even want to draw multiples of Mauis. Like against Ambassador, you want multiple Rush Maui to beat down their locations, like in the Dwarf's Mine, or they have just multiple big bodies. You need to trade them all up. They will use maybe that's a Storm Rage on, but still it's a good trade for you, because they always need to sacrifice a bit of tempo to get rid of it. So that's why is a 4 off against purple decks, really strong. So for me, 100% is a 4 off. Then the Shark, that's like the star of this deck besides McDuck Mana. The Shark in this deck is insanely strong compared to the normal Ruby Sapphire decks. He's like much stronger in this deck, mainly because I'm running 60 cards plus all these actions. Some decks playing over 60 for the develop your brains, but I'm playing like 60 max consistency, and I think that these are 30 actions. So you have like a lot of actions. So when 1 or especially 2 sharks stick, you gain a lot of lore. And most decks cannot get rid of shark immediately. You can also play around many of the tools. And what happens then is if you ramp into shark on turn 4, you can just start using your actions. And every single action, even something like sail, becomes suddenly insane, because it's like, of course, draw 1 for 2 costs is expensive, but you draw 1 and gain 1 lore, or 2 even. So this is like insane. It's an insane value, which makes every single action that you play out, even something like brawls, like will get like insane value. So this is the all star of the deck. You want a double ramp when you're on the play into the half shark, and then from there on out, control the board. He has a cool side effect, and that is what I call Shark Maui stalemate, because your opponent stops questing, right? They stop all their quests. Sometimes they collect the bodies until they are ready to either finish you off or go to 18 or 19 and then finish you off with gold bounce, which is really cool. It gives you a lot of time. You can develop your own stuff. you can develop as a second shark without losing tempo. And yeah, they would just stop questing, and you gain enough time to just spam your actions and just win out to 20 lore. And then the all-star card of my deck that I always run in Ruby Sapphire, that is Develop Your Brain. Develop Your Brain is such an insane card. It's one cost, look at the top 2 cards and take one. In terms of card economy, it doesn't really matter. It's like, yeah, you get one more card. But the thing is, in this deck or in general in Ruby Sapphire, you just want to be faster with top decking. So how I see it is, we have our deck, right? We have a card pool in our deck that we want to see over the course of the game. And at some point, both players will end up top in the top deck mode. Like, it's natural because you keep inking and you keep playing cards out of your hand. That means your hand size will deplete. Like, your draw phase cannot keep up with the amounts of cards that you normally push out. So that means if you are both top decking, the cards like Develop Your Brain and Visions and so on, they would just make you dig faster through the deck. That doesn't only mean that you find whatever you need, but this also just means more consistency in itself because you just saw more cards than your opponent. So and sometimes you can just directly feel, let's say you use a Develop Your Brain, you just see 2 T-pos, and now you just know, instead of drawing these 2 T-pos the next 2 turns, you just skip it. You literally skip it, and then the third card under it will be something different and potentially really strong. So I like this card. I always played it in every of my Ruby Sapphire deck. It's like a core piece to me. Like, I really enjoy playing it turn 1. And now since we have Sail of the Azurite Sea, it just got infinitely stronger because now on turn 2 you can just put it in between, and now you can fix your hand because my deck plays a lot of 4-offs, a lot of mid-range tools. Now you can just adjust your hand, like take a Goof, take a Maui. You're deeper into your deck, meaning you will see more of your tools to beat whatever your opponent is putting out. And that makes this card now really insane, this deck. And of course, Shark Maui, right? You will just play it out. 1 cost for a look at top 2, gain 1 lore or 2, depending on how many sharks, and then just take one of the next 2. This is insane. Like, if you start doing the chain, you will feel the power is really, really strong. Then Vision of the Futures. I don't get why people are running it sometimes at 3. This card is literally your strongest card in the late game because it's literally everything. It's everything in your deck. Because looking at 5 when you are only at 25 to 30 cards in your deck in the late game is so strong. You will see whatever you need normally. And especially in this deck where everything is at 4, right? You will just see the stuff that you need, and then you can just, yeah, get mana, get B prep, whatever you need. So Brawl is the card that I thought the longest about if I want to cut it down. I mainly still played 4 because of decks like Green Steel, the discard deck, and sometimes you just need to get rid of the Diablo and the Ursula. Sometimes you cannot deal with Flynn, so you have to Brawl the Flynn. It's still in here mainly because of that, and in the late game sometimes you can just get rid of 2 lore buddies like Lilos or Daisies. But in general, the card itself is not that important. You could run 3 of it, maybe a 4th Thaler, and then 3 Brawl. I just still played it just in case at 4. At least it's thinkable, but I don't really enjoy that card overall because normally what ends up happening is you would rather push your own game plan instead of reacting. So what you do a lot is you don't even Brawl the opponent's Hiram that often. It's much better to further your own game plan and let them draw, because whatever they draw is so expensive they cannot play it out either way. So you just keep pushing your Shark Maus or Manas or whatever. How far I go, literally most important card in this deck for Shark, because you wanna not only sing something, because it costs 0 basically, right? And you gain the lore, but also this card inks you. This deck, even though it only plays 8 uninkables, has a secret unink tag. And with that I mean, after 6, 7 or 8 ink, you cannot ink most of the cards. You need to keep it in many matchups. You need to keep different kind of cards you need to keep. Like if you, let's say you're at 6 ink, you top deck like Visions, and you don't have to go into Be Prepared right now. You never ink this. You also normally don't ink the Sails, even though it's quite expensive for a draw one. With a Shark out, it's still insane. Develop your brain, you don't want to ink, Bio's Life, you don't want to ink Popsicles, you don't want to ink Manas, you don't want to ink Talas because it goes through your deck, you don't want to ink Hiram if you have Popsicles up. Against certain decks, you don't want to ink Maui if you know there's like locations potentially coming or like favorable trades. And even Tipo, sometimes Tipo is important just to keep the Tremaines off, or like just getting a one lore body basically, and start questing. Like there's so many secret uninks. Like normally you can only ink like Tipo, Brawl, and maybe the Maui after like 6-7 ink. In most of the cards you want to keep. So the main way how you get to like 11 or like higher is the Haufago, like multiple Haufagos. That's why it's at 4. You always want to use it as much as possible as long as the Shark is up. Just keep seeing it with any 4-cost body or Shark itself. And that's how you gain the ink necessary to do the cool plays. The ink thresholds, I would say, are 6 ink, of course for Shark, or for something like any of these small cost cards, plus a 4-drop. Or you can do something like inking directly into B prep. Like at 6 you are really comfortable because you can decide to either stay longer there, keep your inkables in hand, or you go into B prep. The next threshold would be 8, where you can play 2 4-costs, because my deck is full of 4-costs. You want to do something like Tala into Backduck Mana, or Double Hafago, or Tala Hafago. Like you want to do something like this. So you want to go to 8, and then the next threshold would be 11 or 10. 10 would be Shark plus a 4-drop, but that is most of the time not that strong. 11 is the next threshold for one specific play, and that is Be Prepared plus Mana, or Be Prepared plus any 4-drop, but mainly Be Prepared plus Mana, because you can just, I think I did it on stream one time, where you go Mana, Be Prep, then your opponent develops the board again to one-shot the Mana next turn, you go Mana, Be Prep again. Now suddenly the board is wiped twice, and you have double mana on field, and yeah, they cannot get rid of the manas anymore because they used all the useful characters to trade into the mana already. Now at that point you will just win normally. So yeah, more important cards are like Let It Goes. Let It Goes is something I decide to run as a 2-off, even though I wanted to run it as 1 and play 4 Tala to have more consistency, because this card is inked. This card is early game. You have to ink it. You cannot keep it that long. Normally you cannot keep it that long. If you can, you can keep it, but for me, normally I ink it. But there was one game, and I decided specifically to play 2 Let It Goes because I didn't know if the players decide to play like Mufasa, Yellow Mufasa, Purple Hades, or like Gantu or so. And all games the card was not used, or like the second one was never used. But finally at the top 4, I managed to hit a Gantu with that. Like I inked the first Let It Go, and when I saw the second Let It Go from, I don't remember if it was a Tala or Hafago or whatever, I took it and I didn't ink it. And I was like, for sure he will have the one-off Gantu that I saw in his deck list. And he had it. So on 5 ink, the next turn, he summoned the Gantu, I sang the Let It Go, which won me the game, because if my opponent would have connected the 4 lore, that would be really rough for me. Yeah. Then something really special, and that is Pirate's Life at 4. Most people will play 2 or 3, right? 4 is a different kind of sneak basically, and that is literally you try to finish off your opponent by having a layered attack. You have Shark Maui, or in general the bodies, which don't seem threatening at first, but at some point you just gain like 3 to 5 lore with just a Tipo or Tala. And then you have the next line, which is like the Macduck Mana. So after they maybe deal with the Shark, I will play the manas. Let's say I play many Sharks, like 2 Sharks, they will be prep me, I will double mana them back. It's literally like the Ruby Amethyst gameplay, right? Where they go double castle after we prep them. Now we do it with Magdak Mana, which has 9 health, which is like super strong. Like you need something like Maui plus crap to deal with that. But yeah, this is really hard to get rid of the Magdak Mana. And then after they get rid of both, you normally are already at 14 plus lore. And then what happens is you just use Groove and Pirate's Life. You don't need to sing it. That's the beautiful part of this deck. You don't need to sing it. You can just hardcast it. A lot of time, especially in the Shark Stalemate, you top deck this. They're about to get enough bodies so they're 20 lore. You just hardcast the Pirate's Life. Totally fine. And then you quest out of your Sharks, and then you are super ahead suddenly, and your opponent still cannot quest out, because then you just take it back and recast it. So at 4, there's also another reason, and that is if you draw this card in the early game, it's the same as Lego. You cannot keep it that long normally. Sometimes you can and you should, but most of the time you can't, so you have to ink it. And if you run only 2 or 3, inking the first one hurts already really much, because finding it is difficult. But I had a list where I only played 2, and then what happened is every single time I drew it in the early game, I needed to ink it, and then yeah, try finding a one-off afterwards. That is really hard. So I wanted this card to be at max, so I don't have to search for it. Like I don't want to use vision most of the time to search this. I just want to hard draw into it, then I can use the visions to find something else normally. And not only that, it's just helping you against like even super aggressive starts. Just put them by -4 lore, and that is strong enough. Or you would just finish much faster. Then 4, be prepared. Like, you know, I always play 4, but the thing about this now is we have the Magdak Mana to protect. So at some point, in some matchups, what you only do is you have mana, and you only dig for the next be prepared. Like, sometimes you just go visions. You have like so many other good cards, like Hiram, Shark, whatnot, but you just take the next be prepared. You know they cannot one-shot it, so they will spam the board again to get rid of it next turn. Then you be prep. And that's so fun. Like at some point it's only protect the mana, and you just keep be prepping and wait until you top deck your finishers, and then sometimes you win just with the manas, but sometimes you need like Pirate's Life and Proof to finish it faster or finish it at all. And that's it. Really important. And Popsicle, like Popsicle at 4, this is like was my dream for like the longest, where I just said I want 4 items, nothing else, just 4 items. Only the Popsicle. I like Vitalis Sphere, but I didn't want to run it anymore because it was, how should I put it? It's a brick basically. It's like a card that will come up later in the game, right? When you have the 1 ink to actually use it with Shark or whatnot. The problem is always, it's still a card, and this deck here runs really tight on hand cards. Like, every card that you draw needs to be doing something. And if you use the Vitalis Sphere for Hiram, that's fine. But then you use it for Hiram, and it kind of lost the purpose. What I didn't like was playing cards in my deck that didn't had an impact on the play. Let's say even something like Brawl is not that useful most of the time, right? But at least if I have problems against certain cards, I can get rid of it, right? Like Ariel, 3 cost Ursula, Diablo, Flynn. There's so many cards, and it still synergizes really well with the sale curve. So sometimes on the draw, you want the double ramp, like Tipo sale or double sale into Brawl, and then into Shark. And this is still a really good curve on the draw, not so much on the play. But yeah, that's why I didn't like to run all the items, especially Ice Block. I know that makes the trades better, it makes these trades better, it makes Broad better, Medusa, whatnot. The problem is just, it is always like a -1. It feels like -1, it's not really a -1, but you know what I mean. Like, if you ever play the Mirror Match or play all these cards yourself, when you play them out, you just lost a hand card for that time. And when I play the Mirror Match right now, at some point they draw a lot of Hiram, and then they start playing 3 items out, and I'm like, yeah, cool. You lost literally so many hand cards that didn't do anything, helping you against my Shark or my Magdak Mana. And then yeah, it's basically, it's not bricking, but it's like not furthering your game plan in a good way. Of course, in the control version, I would play these items. It's different because you play more heavily on high rim, so you can use the items to recycle. But again, in this deck, you're not playing really much on high rim. And yeah, I still love Popsicle. It's a draw one, cycle one. Cycling in this deck is really important. And then the heal. The heal is a major thing because you need to keep your bodies healthy, so you can trade like 3 times instead of only 2 times. Or you wanna make something survive, so you next turn you can sing How Far Go or Let It Go or Pirate's Life. And you wanna keep your bodies healthy. Another reason why I don't like 4 high rims, because you will use your popsicles to heal quite often, right? So yeah. Another thing now is the Magdark Mana, your second finisher, basically in this deck. And most people are mistaken and that they think the mana's like the core of this deck, like it's the most important part. This is only supplementing the main thing, and that is the Shark Maui. The Shark Maui does the most damage and pressure that you can imagine, and then the manas are only there to help out. So like the theory behind this is literally, if you play against Ruby deck, push as hard as possible with the Half Shark, so they have to be prep you, and then you back it up with the Magdark Mana. But the pressure comes from the Half Shark, because they will never be prep you either way. If they know, especially if they know you're on Magdark Mana, right? So this is the important part. If you also are in a stalemate with the Shark, what happens a lot is you will top deck bad, or like you would take too long until they actually can finish you off by just spamming the bodies. But the Magdark Mana helps here a lot, because now you have your own clock and your opponent has to decide, okay, how fast can I quest my bodies plus the Magdark Mana? Is it like faster than they can develop your board, or can they like wait? And then they have to challenge it or not. And if they challenge it, you can challenge back with the Shark. So like there's a huge synergy behind the Magdark Mana and the Shark itself. And of course, at some point, we'll just use it as a finishing tool. Let's say against like a whole new world, Ember Steel. It's a deck that runs like Zeus plus World Greatest Criminal Minds, so Tamatoa doesn't survive quite often, Half Shark doesn't survive often. What happens is I get real into Magdark Mana a lot, and I just spam the Magdark Manas and they cannot get rid of it. And if they don't fill up the board with a Pete immediately, I can just be prep, and now I have like 2 Magdark Manas and an empty board, and the clock is ticking. So yeah, overall really clean list. I have some cards that I might want to add, but to be honest, for me at least, I was sitting hours and hours and hours right before the event, sitting with my teammates, talking about the list and what I can change and so on. But there's nothing I can really cut, because everything that's as a 4-off I won't touch. Maybe the Brawl, but if I touch the Brawl, I will add a 4th Thala before I add anything else. And yeah, that was my problem. Like anything came up during the testing, everything was important, especially when you are in the top deck mode yourself. You need any digging card. Like that's why Thalas at 3, Hyrims at 3. Like I played it at 2 and 2, as you remember, but I just want to keep digging into my finishers. So I don't know what to cut personally, but you could cut like Brawl, 1 Let It Go if you want to add like 2 more cards. For me personally, like the second Let It Go came up. The first one you will always ink, and for me playing a 2-off makes sense in this deck because you are cycling a lot, and if you see one early game, you normally put it to the bottom, right? Or when you don't need it at that point, you will put it to the bottom, meaning you still have a second one to dig later, or if you need it. That's why I like it at 2. It's still inkable. And yeah, that's what I like. Else, yeah, again, the Brawl and the rest, I wouldn't touch. Even something like Pirate's Life. I saw bits of like running 3 only, but the card is really important. It's like the main goal of this deck, to finish your opponent without questing a lot. Like you have lore on the as characters, you have lore as location, and you have lore in hand basically. So that's like a triple attack on the lore, and that's why you should run it at max. You shouldn't run something like Thievery because that's a bit too low impact for like a 1 cost and it doesn't recycle. Like this card costs you a card. I wouldn't look at the cost. I would look more into the card economy. That means like you are using an entire card and the impact is huge because you gain 2, your opponent lose 2. That's like a 4 lore difference. For Shark, it gets just bigger. Like double Shark, it's 6 lore, right? I gain 4, your opponent lose 2. So that's insane. And yeah, that would be my slots that you can try to make some changes. And then I have like some small cards here, like that you can run. Like I had Tamatoa earlier, and my problem with Tamatoa is the card itself is strong and it's a really good draw engine. You kind of want to draw the Tamatoa, and it is still insane when you can sing something like B Prep and then slam manas back to back. But my problem was sometimes I just don't have the popsicles and I don't want to go for the popsicles all the time. That means if you go for something like Vision and you see a popsicle and you have a Tamatoa in hand, you need to take the popsicle. You have no choice. But in my build, I didn't want to be reliant on that. So right now, if I have like a high rim and I need a more important card instead of popsicle of a Vision, I just don't take the popsicle and I start inking the high rim. But with Tamatoa in your deck and high rim, you need the popsicle. So I don't like that. I kicked the Tamatoa. I played the Tamatoa before, but I kicked it also mainly because I saw that I literally never really won because of the Tamatoa. I won because of the Sharks and MacDuck Manas and so on. Next one. This one is interesting. Hades. Hades is actually cool because you can sing how far go. Be prepared. So you get rid of something, they do whatever, and then you sing Be Prepared, and then you just slam your MacDuck Manas afterwards. So this is really cool. The only weakness is it's a 3 attack one. So what happens is if you play it against like Red Purple or Mirror Match sometimes, you are giving them a target for Medusa, which is normally not useful against you. And I don't want to make the brick cards because it's uninkable, right? I don't want to make the bricky cards alive by playing some cards. So that's why I decided against it. But in general, really nice card because you can sing Be Prepared. Yeah, 4th Thala. Still always good body. Against some matchups you wanna just spam Thalas. I would say especially something like Purple Steel, Amethyst Steel, you can just run a 4th Thala basically and just start spamming the board and not rely so much on Shark because they can just one-shot with like Zeus, right? Madame Medusa, at the beginning I played her because she's a 6 cost, so she can get rid of a body, and then she sings Pirate's Life, really strong. Like when the meta was like green-purple everywhere, this was really strong because you get rid of like a genie or something. Afterwards you play your Shark out and then you sing Pirate's Life for this, immediately your opponent will stop questing at all. Really strong. But the problem is this deck, this card is really bad into Ruby decks. You don't want to hit something in Ruby Amethyst. There are many targets, but you don't really want to hit it. Because it's much better just to spam Sharks or like spam filter cards. Like you don't need to deal with the board because they will stop questing when you have the Shark. So I don't like it. In the mirror match it's even worse because your only real target is Hiram. And again, you ignore Hiram quite much. So I didn't like it. It's uninkable and that's why it's really problematic. Big Sisu is interesting. If you want to run Big Sisu, I would run it as a one-off. I played it as 2 because again, for me 2-offs are important in the cycling deck, but it's the uninkable. Uninkable makes this card really bad in this deck because again, many of your cards are uninkable, even though they are inkable. And this card here is mainly strong when you have a stalemate with Shark and you don't want to be prep your own board. Like sometimes, you know, when they are close to 20 because the board is just saying I'm at 20, but they are not at 20 yet. You don't want to be prep your own Sharks and so on, but then you just play the Sisu and wipe enough bodies so they cannot reach 20 at once. And then yeah, the stalemate goes on, but you have a 3 lore body and so on. So this is like a one-off if you really want to run it. It's also really strong against Ember Steel. That was my mistake though. I played it 2 in the NA Continentals because I was like, needed against Ember Steel. I faced 0, but even if I faced some, just running 4 Pirates Life is also really strong to put them back to a lore mount where I'm saying I'm comfortable with that, right? Then I have some more cards here that are random, like Maui Fishhook consideration, I guess, because you are running 8 Mauis and then you can just run it, but I don't really like it, to be honest. It's just slow. It's like, when you think about when can you develop this, because if you are playing against a fast deck, you're running like a curve of like Goofy or Tala into Rush Maui into Shark Maui, like when do I have time to develop this without falling entirely behind? I can only see this in the mirror match, but in the mirror match I don't really need it. I also, it's like cool for mana, but afterwards it's like, what can I really hit? I can maybe hit like a Shark Maui with Rush Maui, but that's it. So it's a consideration you can think about. And in the end, it's only a one-off, so it's like also random, I guess. Maximus is funny. You can run extra stuff to push your stuff, so it gets more useful, but the problem is just still gimmicky, and yeah, I don't know. I saw it one time in a Discord group, but I didn't really like it. It makes your Rush Maui like alive, not a brick in the late game, because you still gain 2 lore if you have Rush Maui and Maximus, but it's a bit gimmicky. And yeah, I don't have the card right now in my hand, but another card would be Baymax. Baymax can on summon you heal basically 2 and then you gain 2 lore. And if he quests, he does the same. The main problem I have with Baymax is on the first side you see that he can heal like something like Goof, right? Or like Rush Maui, but just think about when do you actually play it. Let's say you will rush something down with Goof, you have like 2 damage on it, and now let's assume they won't get rid of it or trade it off favorably. Now you have a Goof, now you have Rush Maui and Baymax in hand. At what point wouldn't you want to put a Rush Maui down to trade more cards? And then just, or yeah, in what time would you want to play the Rush Maui? And sorry, at what time would you want to summon the Baymax instead of the Rush Maui, right? So now we have to think about, okay, what is then the point of running the Baymax? Because afterwards, when you're at 6 ink, do you really want to develop the Baymax or the Shark? So now we are already in Shark. And now when does the Baymax come down? After Shark? And that's like quite late, it's like turn 5 or later. And then we have to think of something like matchups. Against Ruby Amethyst, for example, they don't want to quest into your Shark, right? That means, how do you want to get damage on your characters? In the mirror match especially, how do you want to get damage at all on your characters? Because whatever you trade normally is like Mauis into Mauis or like into big stuff. They won't quest into your Sharks, so where do you get the damage on your characters to play out a Baymax, right? So that's something how you have to think about cards before you put it in. Because on the first side, or like when you just put cards in for testing purposes, they will always come up and they will always have the time to shine. But just from that logic, pure logic, what I like to do is I cannot see the use case for Baymax. And yeah, so if you want to add some cards, you always have to think like this, like, does it even fit the curve? When would you ever play it over another card in your deck? Because everything in the deck is as a 4-off, right? So you will have it quite consistently in your hand at the time that you need it. And then we play something like Develop Your Brains, Popsicles, Sail. Like, you see a lot of cards. That means like the consistency is high. You will see the cards, and now the question is always, where can I put the tech cards on, right? Like at what point can I play out the tech cards? Another cool tech card I have flying around here is like this one here. This is actually cool because it's how it's designed. It is quite a late game card. It's the sword release, it just says at the start of your turn, if you have a character in play with more strength than each of your opponent's opposing character in play, each opponent loses 1 lore and you gain lore equal to the lore loss. So basically it's like thievery, but as an item. If you are in a stalemate with the shark, this one is, I guess, okay, because you just take one away, take one away, take one away. It's not so much about the game, but taking one away, so they need to spam much more bodies than they're losing each turn, so this is quite funny. That's the uninkable item, so it's like, again, uninkable. I thought about running 2 instead of the Sisus when I switched, but I just decided to go for the Talas and Hyrims, just to have more consistency, because if you're in top deck mode and draw this one, it doesn't do anything. It makes you rush my life though, so it is a consideration. I'm just want to tell you. Yeah, overall, this deck is really fun. The deck can basically beat everything. It doesn't really have an insane bad matchups. I would say it's like 50-50 into everything at least. And into most decks, it's really, really strong, of course. I would say into Ruby Amethyst, into the normal mirror match, and into most purple decks. It is really, really strong, at least 60-40 or higher. And yeah, try it out. And if you need help, check out my meta file below. I will have my masterclass for this deck specifically in there, and I will explain everything about what to ink, what your game plan is, what you have to mulligan for, what you have to be careful of, and yeah, how you have to play it out, how to finish out the matchups. Yeah, thank you guys for watching and have fun with my deck.